Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Friday's webinar with Anicca Digital. It's myself, Anne Stanley. I'm hosting for the day, and I'm very pleased to have Zak Averre with me today. Morning, Zak.
Hello.
So Zak's going to introduce himself, and he's got an amazing talk on editing AI, making ChatGPT more human. So I'm going to close my video and mic down and pass over to Zak. This is being recorded, so you will get the recording later on. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for your time today. I very much appreciate it. I just want to say in today's webinar, we'll be looking at AI content generation, its current limitations, the applications you can use it for, and kind of how you can make your copy sound a bit more human and natural. Sort of first a little bit about me. My name is Zak Averre. I'm a senior content account manager at Anicca Digital. I've been in content marketing for over a decade now, and about 9 of that being in agency. And when it comes to marketing, my interest comes from my studies, which are really in English literature and communication. So I'm sort of fascinated by the power of writing and what you can accomplish with it. I'm also, unlike Anne, a bit of an AI skeptic. So ever since it's come in, I've been on the end of, okay, it's good, but how good can it be? But I am coming around to its benefits and how it can, sort of be used to help you. Also, just a little bit about Anicca. If you're not familiar, we're an award-winning digital agency. We're based in Leicester. And it's also, we've got that a data-driven approach, which is very much championed by Anne and the technical team. But also as a multi-channel service provider, we kind of combine all of these, the paid, the organic, design, etc., to sort of meet whatever the client's needs are and provide support across the entire digital marketing spectrum. Okay, so in today's webinar, we're going to focus on content specifically and using tools like ChatGPT. For these examples, I've stuck to just ChatGPT. I prefer Claude a lot of the time, and I'm sure there's obviously custom GPTs and things like that you can use. But from a purely ChatGPT level, we're going to look at how AI writes, the pros and the cons, and then look at some of the techniques for how you can improve collaboration with some of these tools. So firstly, how does AI write? And is it strictly writing? I'm sure you all know the answer, or most of you might know the answer, but the answer is essentially no, not really. AI writers are powered by machine learning, and they use logic and data to determine the most likely word after another. It's not writing, it's probability, so it's analysis plus databases plus all the math that goes on equals output. It's a computer. So they're essentially learn to identify patterns within data and predict words. This is something that I think is quite interesting if you look at that little image I've put on the right there. This was from a Forbes piece this year about people's concerns around AI. And the second from the top being autonomous AI systems making decisions without human intervention. And the number of Brits who had this concern was 39%. And I think there lies the crux. The human in the loop is kind of critical to decisions around important things around ethics, economics, everything, but also your writing and how you sound. So, and here it is from the mouths of babes. If you look at that first line, you've got the model is trained on massive data. It learns how language flows, for example. There's a question. Michael, I think there's a button to expand your screen potentially. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can make this any bigger on my side.
Yeah, it's top right, or if you go full screen on your own laptop, which is usually F11, something like that. But if you click above the top right of the screen, then you'll see that.
Perfect. So the training phase, it learns how language flows. It understands and learns how it flows. It also doesn't think like humans, but rather predicts what comes next based on probability. So again, it's using maths and science to get to there. In short, and here it goes, sort of, this is straight from ChatGPT, it says, AI doesn't know things. It's learned patterns so deeply that it can simulate understanding by generating responses that feel intelligent, relevant, and creative. This is not to take away from what it gives you. It's more just to make sure that you understand what it's doing, and that the need for you to keep an eye on it. So, and I'm not saying it doesn't have a place. I'm not questioning our future robot overlords either. I'm merely reinforcing the fact that it doesn't come from a place of understanding necessarily. And this can lead to lazy prompting, which will give you content that can be formal or robotic with repetitive sentences or paragraph structures. It can also lead you into cliche or tired tropes that, again, are based on probability because it's pulling from the internet and what the most common phrasing might be. This can lead to stories or blogs that lack a personal touch or unique perspective. For those of you who may have seen my previous sort of presentations on this topic, you'd know my hatred for sort of beige content and how important it is to try and keep things unique. And then finally, there's the formatting issue, which I don't think is necessarily an issue. Sometimes it can produce a blog structure for you, which is really highly structured that you can use and work with. But if it looks too structured, then it can come across as insincere and not human. So yeah, this is another one I sort of made a clip from one of those previous webinars, but I like to use it to highlight the repetitions that I've mentioned above. So I looked at a study from Grammarly in this year, and it only reinforced it. I double checked it just to see what the latest models are doing, and they still kind of fall into repetition of certain phrases and words. They kind of rely on them, like delve into that being said. And I think it's really interesting because these become like filler words, and I'll sort of get into why they use them a little bit later. But this chart on the right, I find quite fascinating. On the right-hand side, you've got kind of the frequency of use of word usages in academic writing through excess vocab. So it's how much these words are being overused in essays and papers and things like that. If you start at the bottom, you've got pandemic and Ebola, and you can sort of see the spikes in these around the times that they were relevant. The pandemic reaching 0.04 between 2020 and 2024, and Ebola around 2013, 2014 hitting like 0.01, which are relatively low frequencies when you compare them to something like Crucial up here, which is in 2024 around 0.06. So it's showing you how much more common these words are than global pandemics that basically occupied our every thought for years and years. It just shows you the excess use. And you can see it here on the right, sort of played out in the way that you've got these spikes of content words and style words. You've got, again, not necessarily very nice things, but these are peaks because they, grip the world. Things like Ebola, Zika, COVID, and where they reach the excess word counts based in academia versus uses of ChatGPT and Delves, which have far outstripped them at the end there. So I think it's interesting to note that you need to police the language that it uses to make sure it's not overusing phrases, because it can fall into that because it's based on probability. Another issue, and one no doubt designed to ensure they get in as little trouble as possible, is most tools don't speak with conviction. They will tend towards passive language and use qualifiers or softeners to make sure what they say is gray and not really black and white. It's a lot of the reason you see videos of people saying, "Oh, ChatGPT understands me." And it's not really that. It's more just confirming your biases. So it's one of these things where you need to make sure that you are checking it to make sure that it's saying and being as convicted with what it's meant to say as possible. And you can see this with some of the qualifiers, words like typically, broadly. They all take away from your argument and weaken what you have to say. They generally they lessen the force of your statement. So I asked ChatGPT why it does this, and it kind of explained. Gen AI doesn't have understanding or beliefs or lived experience. Instead of knowing things, it predicts likely word patterns. In essence, generative AI imitates language without true comprehension or intent. It can summarize, explain, or infer pattern, but it cannot hold an opinion or assert a fact with genuine certainty. This nature makes it more tone neutral and less decisive than human experts who speak from knowledge, evidence, or conviction. So I think that's really important, because that's where you might find you'll be losing your readers or losing the effect of your writing. Is if you don't prompt right or edit right, you end up with something that's this just gray sludge that doesn't mean anything and doesn't communicate anything. And at the end of the day, when we're on a website or we're looking for information, we're looking for that level of communication. And here's an example. So I just asked ChatGPT for a sample text, and I plugged it into Hemingway. For those who haven't used the Hemingway app, it's genius. Please use it. It's really good. It's free. It essentially, it's based on Ernest Hemingway's writing, who was very well known for killing darlings and being straight and to the point with the way that he wrote. So essentially what it does is it helps you kill your darlings and make your writing simpler and punchier. On the right here, on the right, you can sort of see that the tool is highlighting sentences that are hard to read in red, which is the majority. Somewhat difficult to read in sort of that browny yellow color. Words with simpler alternatives in purple. And then your weakeners in blue. So these are the ones where they're not doing much, they're just taken away from your argument. So first thing you may note is all the red text. This sample from ChatGPT scored very high for difficulty. Hemingway uses a graded level of comprehension, and this is reading 6 levels above the recommended 9th grade level. They recommend the 9th grade level on the internet is because it's supposed to take into account all the users, the majority of users on the internet aren't necessarily English native speakers, and English may be their second or third language. So you need to make sure that you're writing in a way which the majority of people can understand. So we can see it's difficult to understand. It's difficult to read, but you can also see how many sort of blue highlights there are. These are the things that are weakening the argument. You don't need far more quickly. You can make it so much stronger without that. You can shorten the sentence, make it punchier. You could take out how articles are written. You could just say AI is revolutionizing articles or writing. You don't need to have how articles are written. It just adds more words and takes away from the statement. And it's just a way of showing that it's the efficacy that you can change. So that's just an example of what we're talking about and how it sort of plays out. And this leads me to another favorite slide of mine, and one where I get to use something I learned from university again. This kind of forms a lot of the basis of the way that I understand communication and I like to think about writing. Because what we've discussed above is kind of worlds apart from how you and I communicate. We've spent sort of hundreds of years debating how we do this. When you think, all the way from Plato's cave to postmodern texts, there's theories on narratology and the way that we communicate that have changed and shaped how we think. And this is probably one of my favorites. And it's sort of, you consider the line from the author to the reader, if I start from there. You would assume if I write something, you read it, that's it, the interaction's done. That's how ChatGPT would see it. But that's not what people do. You see, we make assumptions along the way. In this case, you have the author, that's me, writing a slide on how people write, which is kind of odd in itself. I have an idea of who I am. Then you have the implied author being who you think I am, my experience, my age, my background, where I'm from, whatever it may be. You then have the focalizer or narrator. So in a book, that's your narrator. Online, it'll be your brand or your website. And this kind of, again, changes how you and I interact with the blog. For example, if you're reading an article on a news site compared to a brand site or a product site, you may infer the information and take it more seriously or less seriously, however you view that focalizer. Then you have the implied reader, who is my target market. It's who I'm speaking to, so who I think you are. And then finally, you have the reader, who's the person at the end of the journey. And sort of at every step along the way, this meaning can, sort of shift or change. And it makes you change how infinitely complex and unique communication is, more than just probability. And that's something that we need to keep in mind when we're writing, is that you're writing for people. So there you go. So that's kind of where we're at. We kind of have this system that is based on math, but we don't work with math. So how do we bring the two together? I would say we look at what it does well and what it can't do for a start. First off, I think it can do a lot of the legwork for you. I find personally, AI is great for research or collating data information. It's one of those things. It can also be good as a starting point if you're having kind of like a creative block, or you need an idea for a structure, or if you need ideas for what's a popular idea around a topic. You can come up with just titles just to get you as a jumping off point. You can use it to think outside the box. We've used it before. I've used it before for like social posts, for things like riddles, or little limericks or poems that you don't necessarily want to put together. Excuse me. I'm fighting the end of a cold still, and it just won't leave me alone. Oh. And finally, this one with a big caveat: you can use AI to understand what competitors are doing better than you. So I think a great example of this, and one that I did, was I needed data from the Met Office to write a piece on the sunniest and rainiest parts of the country. I was able to get this data, and it was just downloaded in a notepad almost format of just text from 1904 to 2024, regions across the country, rainfall patterns, sunlight hours, everything you can imagine, just numbers. No order, nothing, just a massive sheet of numbers. And I looked at it and thought, I don't have the time. I don't know how I'm going to turn this into something. And I'd never had the time to take all that. It would just take, manually, it would be impossible. ChatGPT could. It could help repurpose the old content. It could help turn it into something meaningful for me, and then provide some kind of takeaways that I can then put into my copy. So that's sort of something where I think it really shines. I also think outside of just processing data, repurposing old content. So if you have an old blog that you don't necessarily want to rewrite, but you want to turn into a quick one, you can plug that in, see where it can improve it, edit it, upload it, hopefully speed that up. You can rework product descriptions. From all my years in copywriting, I've done my dues, and a lot of that time was spent writing product descriptions, which can be mind-numbing when you have the same product in 18 different sizes, and you have to think of 18 different unique ways of describing that product in 2 lines. It can be a nightmare. So ChatGPT can be really good for things like that. And as I say, it can give you initial draft ideas, structures to work from, that sort of stuff. This is just another one I thought was quite interesting, because basically it comes back to the point that vetting is important, because Gen AI doesn't just it can't provide a unique viewpoint or interrogate the sources like a human can. I think I just found this chart and I thought I really liked it. Slide on the right, quite interesting. This is from a McKinsey report found in March, but they basically found in their global survey of AI usage, only 27% of people believe that everything AI generated at work is reviewed by a human, which is a scary amount when you think of how much is then is being put out there without someone at least having a look at it first. And I think an incredible 30% estimate that only up to 20% of their produced work is vetted. That worries me a little. I love editing, and I think we need more editors. So I think it's something that is really important to ensure that either you or your team are sort of incorporating, is someone to double check work and make sure that it is what it should be. And that's because AI can't provide unique viewpoints. It can't fit information. It can struggle to be consistent. It can fall into stereotypes, and it can lead to more beige content. So that's not what we want. And here you go. Just before we get to the practical advice, here's a little more evidence of ChatGPT telling on itself, because you can make it do that. I think I've mentioned pretty much all of these things in detail, but one to really highlight is inaccurate data and reinforcing stereotypes. This can obviously have a really profound effect on society, be really bad. So it's important to ensure that you're double checking these things too. Okay. I don't think there's any. Are we taking questions at the end for this, Anne, do you think?
Yes, I would recommend you do. Otherwise, what happens is you get a bit sidetracked. So you're probably better off carry on and then come to the questions at the end.
Okay. So let's move on to the practical stuff. So I've set the scene with a lot of doom and gloom, but I promise you there are ways to ensure that your first draft or the structure that comes out of it is better than just a large language model probability response. First off, you need to you get out what you put in. So the more detailed you are with your prompts, the more effective tools like ChatGPT and Claude can be. I think we've been experimenting with this. I know Anne and the team in the background have been working a lot with custom GPTs, with N8N, with things like that to incorporate other tools which help kind of direct this. And I think that's really valuable because that's where it shines. Because as soon as you start breaking it down and start understanding it like the programming that it is, you're going to get much better results. But for our purposes, I want to experiment with steps and how things, there you go. And check out Secret Agents. There's some great stuff in there, some great free tools. So these prompts, so we're going to talk about prompting first. These prompts are broken down into a few, let's say, loosely defined subsets. I'd take some issue with these, mainly because I think some of them are more indicative of parts of previous prompts as opposed to styles of prompting themselves, but that's just me. You have your zero shot prompts, which are simple instructions, a quick result, singular point, write this for me, bang, you get your result. You get your few shot prompts, which is a multi-prompt approach, which includes examples to shape tone or structure. And this is where you kind of include the next few, I would say. So you have your instructional prompts, which is used to give direct commands, like write, explain, provide a table, give me a chart, whatever the case may be. Role-based prompts, which are your styles and voices. You're given a persona or you're given a tone of voice. You say, this is our branding, this is how we speak, that sort of thing. You have contextual prompts, which can kind of fall into the others, but generally it's about adding the context or background around who you are, what the topic is, who your audience is, that sort of thing. And then meta or system prompts are those hidden settings. Say hidden. I think most people know about temperature now, but the kind of settings that define the tone and behavior, like the type of language that it uses. So let's start with zero shots. Zero shot prompts is not a conversation, just an instruction, right? It can be effective as long as you take the time to craft and provide context. URLs, background information, target audiences, purposes of the piece, all those things I mentioned earlier in the previous slide. Location they're working in, any and all information can help create more nuanced output. However, it can potentially confuse AI if you give it too much to work with. So it's one of those things where you want to kind of gauge how much is too much and what it will work with first. This, again, where custom GPTs come in handy. There's one on Secret Agents, which I think is the blog writing one, which is super helpful, where it breaks it down into sort of a form that you fill, and that will create those, you break it down step by step in that form, and it'll feed it back to you. So I find that one quite helpful. So you got your prompt here. What's the best time of year to see the autumn colors in the Lake District? And it will quickly generate a response to that. However, if you give it more context, try not to confuse it with the zero shot prompt, you're an experienced hiker specializing in woodland trails based on recent weather patterns. And you can predict the best time in autumn to visit the Lake District for autumnal colors and explain it to holidaymakers. You can see how much more detail we've added there. It's not just a case of here's the question. It's you're giving it the context of time, place, everything. And that response will get you a vastly different response to the one above and give you a better starting point. So even a zero shot, when done correctly, it can be very, very helpful. This one is the one I work with most often, I'd say. So instead of trying to get all the information in one prompt, you kind of want to feed your AI tool a bit of information at a time, ensure it understands what you've provided. And then this allows you to tweak the style, ensure the right information is used, and the format is correct before sending it away to create a large piece of work. So for this one, you've got kind of the prompt helping to set the scene. So again, you've got your travel writer based on current weather trends, explain the best time to visit the best time in summer to visit Cornwall for beach activities, describe what visitors can expect during that season. You then get a response. The best time to visit is between late June and early September. You say, okay, I don't like that tone. Can you be more descriptive? Try it again. Can you provide more information on places to visit? Carry on. And then once you've got it to the place where you want and the tone and everything, you can say, now continue, or using the experience and the style above, or using the example above. Now you are an experienced hiker specializing in woodland trails. Based on the recent weather patterns, predict the best time in autumn to visit the Lake District for autumn. So this way, it kind of allows you to break it down step by step. And especially if you can't think of every parameter off the top of your head for a zero shot prompt, then you can just break it down step by step. Or again, use something like a custom GPT if you have one to help you remember, oh, I need to put in audience. Oh, I need to put in this. Oh, I need to put in something else. So those are the two main ones I would say. And then within those, you have different types of prompting that you need to think of. So we have instructional prompts. And I think they're more about directing the outcome you want, These are, do you want it to be a blog? Are you looking for a calendar? Are you looking for an explanation? Are you looking for FAQs? Are you looking for it to collate data? These are the very straight to the point, write, explain, collate. I need you to give me this specific output. That is the instructional side of the prompting technique. So for these, I think these ones are pretty straightforward, and you can think of several off the top of your head. So I won't sit on it too long, but you can sort of see from here it's saying explain the best time in summer to visit. Explain it to holiday makers. So you're giving it the direction it needs with the instruction to move on. Another element is context. This is something that influences everything in the presentation. If you go all the way back to what I was talking about, the way the humans communicate, context is kind of key. In the above, you can see context with some of the way that we've provided, for holiday makers or whatever the case may be. And here are a few more examples. You can see brand mentions, my brand is Y, insert the URL. We are specialists in providing UK holidays for families. I need you to create a holiday plan for a week in Cornwall. Please write with a temperature of 0.8 and use British English. You can see there's the background information on the audience. You can see there's the time parameter, there's a place. There's also a temperature, which is sort of a measurement between 0 and 1 for those who are unfamiliar. And that tells ChatGPT how creative to be. So 1 being very creative, go wild. 0 being very formal, almost like an instruction manual. I'm sure a lot of you use it, but temperature is really, really useful, and I recommend experimenting with it. Generally, I like to ask ChatGPT to create 2 or 3 versions at various temperatures of a paragraph or something to see what it comes back with, and then you can mix and match them. I find then it sounds much more natural rather than a singular temperature, which seems very uniform. You're able to add a bit more of a human voice just by mixing and matching the different temperatures. And then you have your meta prompts. So your meta prompts are a style where you set the scenario, give you a tool or persona to work from. These are kind of like being the director or giving some sort of stage direction. And I think these are probably most effective when you're trying to establish tone and that sort of thing, and make sure that the AI is in the frame of reference where it's understanding the role it's supposed to play. So this can help shape the piece even before you fed any information or topic. And it's especially effective if you have a strong brand voice you want to maintain. So if you've done a lot of branding exercises, you'll know about sort of, we're a hero brand, or we're a whatever kind of Jungian archetype your brand fits into. Or potentially if you've done branding exercises, you may also have a celebrity or a famous person that you say, this is who we want to sound like. So if you're a brand that wants to sound like David Attenborough, tell it to act like David Attenborough. How would he speak about this topic? So these are the sort of things you can do. You can also phrase it in a way and have a conversation with it first. So if you're uncertain of how to approach a topic, you can ask it to take this role and then ask it to ask you questions. So you can say, okay, greet me and then ask me specific questions about my holiday and about my family. And then once we have that information, I'll say we're ready and we can go into creating the content. So you put yourself in the shoes of the customer and you try and answer as if the AI agent is, planning the holiday for you. So going meta with it and kind of acting can also be a valuable way if you're uncertain how to approach it. So those are the main prompting techniques. And I think those techniques are quite valuable and quite useful, but they are, even with them, you'll find that there's still work that needs to be done. So I don't think it's necessarily a case of, okay, I've got this prompt down to a T. You don't need to worry about anything else. You can just pump it out and just put into the ether. That's not really the answer. You also need to edit any output, because no matter how well crafted, like I said, you need to look out for the overuse of words and things like that. So this is probably my biggest bugbear, and it's one I've been using tools for a while now, and some of the most common areas are content truncation. So when it comes to truncating content, it does it because of the probability and the way it works. So it's going and it's looking at everything on the internet, and it's taking almost like, if you imagine all these blogs on the internet, and essentially what ChatGPT is doing is it's cutting out the middle of every single bit. It's doing away with a unique intro or a unique conclusion, and it's taking the meat. It's taking the bulk of what it needs, the data, and it's putting that together. But this can lead to very kind of content that tends towards summary. I find it doesn't necessarily tell a story. It just summarizes a topic, or it can very often just summarize a topic and generalize. And it can then lead to content that has a lot of words, but doesn't necessarily convey a message. It just feeds you information. So take this introduction, for example. You got the Lake District is one of the UK's most breathtaking destinations, famous for its rugged fells, glassy lakes, and charming villages. Now I think that sentence is quite descriptive, quite flowery. I like it. It fits the setting. It's like painting a picture. I think it's really useful. However, the second sentence feels a bit vague and generalizing. It's saying, so here you can see the generalizing aspect of it. While it is a place of beauty all year round, the best time to visit depends on what you want from your trip, whether it's an outdoor adventure, peaceful escapes, or simply soaking up the stunning scenery. Nothing wrong with the actual structure of the sentence. It just doesn't tell me much. So why not do away with that? Keep the first line, because it presents this wonderful image, and then personalize it and add some impetus. You could add something like, so why not pack a few bags, bundle the kids into the car, and see what this bucolic bounty has to offer with Zak's Travels unique family getaways. Salesy, I know, but it kind of leads you to the path of, here's the place, let's do something about it. Get the kids in the car, let's go on an adventure, visit my website, here's the name. It's kind of a lot more punchy in that way. That's not what you get from content generation a lot of the time. You get that generalization and the truncated effect. So I think that you need to keep an eye on the middles of all your words, which sounds very silly, but if you look at all of your paragraphs, make sure that they actually start and end with something of interest. If you go back to school days and how you were taught to write, the purpose of an introduction is to introduce a topic, the body is to talk about that topic, and then the conclusion is to conclude and summarize what you've spoken about above. So each paragraph should be trying to do that. Next, the summary nature kind of extends to the way AI targets the reader. So without context, you'll get things like the phrases highlighted in the slides. You'll see, for every kind of traveler. It's just very vague. It doesn't tell me much. It's just, I want it to be specific. And similarly, I'm sure that I've highlighted these places, and no offense to them, I'm sure I've been to St. Ives. I'm sure Newquay, Padstow, the Eden Project, Tintagel Castle. I'm sure they're all wonderful places, and they're definitely worth visiting. But I feel like they are the obvious choices, and I'm sure that Cornwall's got a lot more to offer. So I think this is kind of where, if it's your topic, your expertise and experience can shine. So don't rely on ChatGPT to figure out these things. Change those, provide a unique perspective, add personality, maybe add a story or humor or sincerity. Don't land on the don't go as far as those recipe websites where someone does chapter and verse before they actually get to the recipe. But by all means, add a little kind of tidbit about who you are or what your experiences are, or this little village is actually really quite cool, that sort of thing, just to show the human side of your website and provide something that's a bit more unique. So that's where I think you need to ensure that sort of expertise and personality come through. And then finally, when it comes to editing, what you want to do, it comes to you want to look at your structure, and you want to remember to vary and simplify your writing. If we go all the way back to that response we got in Hemingway, you'll remember how complex the sentences were. You want to make sure that you are varying up your sentence lengths. A lot of authors already do it, but you may notice it if you in your own reading of books and things like that. But if you're trying to build tension, be conscious of how you do that, because you want to use short, punchy sentences to try and build the tension, get the speed up. And then you want sort of long, languid sentences for descriptions or explanations if you really want to sit on a moment and explain something. Just consider how you're combining the sort of short and long format and how you're using it in your content. You also want to check your repetition and overused terms. Some of those overused words we found above at the start of the sentence. I'm sure I saw in the chat someone mentioned, yes, I've seen something pop up all the time. So I'm sure there's a lot of examples you'd be like, why am I always seeing this phrase? And it's just because ChatGPT is using the logic behind it to land on those. And another one is also ensure using the correct tense, and that is consistent. As native speakers, we often fall into passive voice. It's just the way of communicating in England in particular is to be quite passive with the way we speak. It's quite polite, it's less direct. But when it comes to your writing, if you're trying to write with conviction, try to eliminate passive phrases wherever you can. So to make sure that you're doing subject, verb, object, as opposed to the other way around. Like, the boy kicks the ball, not the ball is kicked by the boy, for example, because that kind of softens the way that it sounds. Also ensure that you are, when it comes to your tenses, that you're keeping it kind of similar, I'd say. This is more just from personal experience, but I spent a couple of years teaching English as a second language. And for people who are native learners, a lot of the time, it can be very difficult to fathom the way that English has this thing of you can speak in the present, the past, and the future all at the same time, because a lot of languages don't necessarily have that, or not in that structure. So you need to make sure that you are understanding that and you're trying to keep the right tense throughout. And yes, thank you, Rajesh. Very true. Spelling. A lot of these will default to US English. So if you can, specify where you are, the region, the language that you use. So those three bits, I think, also feed into it. It's just things on top of everything else to keep in mind. So with all of that said, and you just remember that AI is a tool and not a solution. I've used that heading, I think, in every single one of my presentations, and I think I'll use it forever, because it's worth repeating over and over again that it isn't a panacea. It's not this thing that's going to cure all and be the answer to all your solutions. Like every other sort of modern development throughout history, the internet, whatever you can think of, it's not the solution. All it is a tool in your process and how you work. So it can certainly help speed up delivery, but it should not replace you or your voice. That's where you should land on this. You should, look to experiment with steps and styles, find a system of prompting that works for you, whether that's zero shot or, sort of multi-shot, or even if you prefer doing the meta approach and trying to envision a role in which you try to get the result you want. Always consider your audience and intention before any project. It's easy to fall into, all right, okay, I need to write something, and then you get out and you just start prompting. But if you spend 10 minutes beforehand thinking, okay, what is the purpose of this? Who is it for? What am I hoping to get out of this? Who am I in this communication? That can help you before you even put the prompt together, because as soon as you start typing the prompt, there's almost like a timer that goes off in your mind, and you're like, oh, I need to get this out. I don't know if that's just me, but maybe it is. But you feel like now I'm in a rush to try and get this prompt sorted as quickly as possible. So take your time beforehand. Even, consider writing your prompt in a document somewhere else and then copy pasting it when you're ready for it. And finally, this is something that I think holds water regardless of industry and regardless of time, is get a fresh pair of eyes on it. It's easy to write something or have something generated and edit it. But if you're too close to it, it can be very difficult to see any faults or gaps. So anything you have, if you have the capabilities and someone available, just say, hey, do you mind quickly checking this for me? Just read this, give it 5 minutes. Tell me if it works. Tell me if it doesn't, if there's anything that you think it could add or something like that. And just by having someone else's eyes on it, you can generally get a better piece of writing. So with that, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. I hope you found this helpful. I'm sure I can see there's a red dot by Q&A, so I'm sure there's questions, so we'll go through those, and I'll sort of answer them as best I can.
Thank you. That was really good. I've been trying to multitask, so I haven't taken notice of the questions. So we might have to go back to the beginning of the chat and have a look at the questions. One thing, a phrase that I use, which I think describes your talk, is the concept of an AI sandwich, and the idea, excuse me, that the human has the idea, has the creativity, has the prompt input to get the best possible result. The AI generates something, and then the human edits it. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, I'm going to have to take a sip of water.
I managed to get you sick across the camera somehow, Anne. Sorry about that.
Sorry, it just went the wrong way. Yeah, so I think the concept of an AI sandwich, a human AI sandwich, is really important, because even when I get good results from AI, I often find that I rerun it and I have to combine it. And you actually ask it to combine what you want, and it just won't do it. And I know that last time I spoke at agency Hackers, there was somebody saying, I find it really annoying. I keep putting the same question in and I get a different answer every time. Mm-hmm. And people just don't seem to understand that it's generated by probability, and you're never going to get exactly the same answer. So yeah, let's go through the questions.
Okay, there's one that's in the Q&A which we can start with. I suppose if you want to go through the chat, I can look at the one in Q&A first.
Yeah, so the first one is about temperature, isn't it?
Yeah. So I see this one from Michael. Thank you very much. Could you dive a bit into temperature more, and where in ChatGPT the settings can be exited to do things like asking to show its level of certainty of confidence at the end of each answer it gives? The first part of that, temperature, temperature is really interesting. I'm not 100% sure. I'm assuming what it will do in the back end is it will expand the parameters of what sort of probability of word it allows, which will probably allow it to incorporate maybe something that isn't as high probability as something else. So if you're going 0.1, the temperature will be, this is the most common word after this. So that's where you're going to get your very instruction-like temperature. If you go up to 0.9, it's probably incorporating a lot more and going to get a lot more wild results. And your variance, if you were to put in the same prompt several times, your variance would be much higher. So that's why I think it's good to experiment with the temperature, because you're then challenging the tool more. You're getting more out of it and more examples of that phrase or that paragraph. And then you've got 3 or 4 variations, and you can take the first sentence from one and maybe the second sentence from another, and you might find it incorporates information it wouldn't necessarily if you increase the temperature.
So just the other half of that question is, where do you find it? So if you're going through the chat interface, it's not obvious. So you'll have to say, oh, can you increase the temperature? Or what would it be if the temperature was 0.7 versus 0.9? But if you go into the OpenAI playground, which is the original interface of using ChatGPT before ChatGPT existed, there's actually buttons that you can play around in there as well. So Google's AI Studio and AI Playground is very good as well for similar reasons, is that you can mess around with a lot of the other settings as well. So that would be the way that you changed it. Also, the way you describe your prompt. If you say, I mean, I've just been doing a prompt on an email, and it was in response to somebody that basically wanted a discount. And so because they wanted a discount, the format that ChatGPT gave me was really formal. And I said, well, no, I would never write it like this, make it informal. So in a way, sometimes the way you describe the prompt, making it informal, formal, will also have an impact on some of the settings like temperature. There was a second half of that question, there wasn't there? There was.
Yes, that one's got to do with the asking to show its level of certainty or confidence at the end of answers it gives. I think that's a really good point, Michael. And I can't say I've experimented with it much, but I could definitely see a world in which you say at the end of it, you could say, please let me know how certain you are of the fact that you're stating, and provide sources, for example.
It's definitely worth putting phrases in like fact check, provide citations, but don't just assume that because it provides a link, it's not hallucinated it. I've heard examples, not necessarily in ChatGPT, but AI giving links, and then actually they're genuine websites. When you click on it, it's a completely artificial or made up PR article. So you definitely do need to validate, particularly if you are, it is an important piece of sort of anything.
And I'd say particularly with the industry you're in, to keep that in mind, because I remember there was a story about I'm not sure if it was a law student or a lawyer themselves, but they were in a trial or a mock trial of some kind, and they cited a court case as precedent for whatever their argument was, and it turned out that case didn't exist. It had just been made up because it used ChatGPT, and ChatGPT had hallucinated some sort of statute or something like that, and they use it as their like legal definition and legal defense, which got them in a bit of trouble. So it's important also within your industry to remember that maybe you need to be more rigorous with your fact checking, depending on what you're writing about and who you're writing for. I can see another one from Joseph, which sort of says, what in the way of persona building knowledge bases, along with charisma influence framework for your agent to deliver human level responses in writing? I think you're asking sort of how we kind of how we make it sound more human in the prompting phase. And in addition, building psychology plugins which help the agent understand human nature and emotion. That's tricky. Wow. I would struggle to answer that in full, Joseph, to be honest with you. I think, like you said, for the first part, I think we kind of covered that a little bit with the meta stuff. So if you ask it to take on a role, I think that's helpful in trying to give it as much of a human perspective as you can, not just from the perspective of ChatGPT, but from the perspective of this person. You are this person. Tell me what this person is like, and try and speak to it like a human. I think that's how you get probably more human level responses, and then that can inform the writing. In terms of a psychology plugin, that's probably trickier and probably something beyond definitely beyond my skill set, and something that you'd need someone with programming, artificial intelligence, to be able to define a certain psychological mindset to then plug into it. I'm not 100% sure on the second part, but it's certainly an interesting question. And I don't know if you have anything for that one, but that's.
I've not heard of anybody using a psychology plugin. That's quite interesting. I think if you went into something like a custom GPT, so just to explain what custom GPT is, if you're not aware, if you've got a free package of ChatGPT, you can access other people's custom GPTs that they've built, but you can't build your own unless you've unless you've got a paid version. So I think we've got something like 60 that we've built, and most of them we're converting into automations on secret agents. But you will find some psychology type custom GPTs there. You just have to do some searches. So that's definitely an interesting approach. But I guess if you don't know about psychology, you could be going down a rabbit hole yourself, and confirmation biases, and you might end up sometimes a little knowledge is worse than no knowledge at all. So I would be a little bit careful about that without any prior training or any prior at least some research. And I wouldn't do all your research just in ChatGPT, as you won't have any industry knowledge to be able to confirm with whether it's telling you the truth or not.
There's the next one's a bit more practical, and one I can definitely answer. Can ChatGPT remember past conversations? So if I was to prompt in a way of writing, would the AI recognize that prompt in a later content generations, even if it's in a different chat? If so, would it be worth building my AI to recognize the way I write or want to publish for future use? To my knowledge, not in this. If it's in different chats, it won't remember. In the same chat, it will. Unless you've got a custom GPT, right, Anne?
It's a little bit more complicated than that, because they are adding memory, and I'm not sure where they are. James or Darren might know if they're in the chat. They can look it up while we're talking. So the word project is a little bit confusing, because within a custom GPT, you can basically put a project, which is a string of chats together. And that does have the ability to remember what's within that within that project. Claude also uses something called a project as well. Now, Claude project is what I spend all my time in. So what I do is I create a project for every single bit of work that I'm doing. So if I'm doing some competitor research, if I'm doing some go-to-market strategy, or if I'm doing some research or analysis, I'll put it in or if I'm creating an automation, I'll put that in a project. And although I'll have a series of messages, it also has knowledge. And in the knowledge, you can upload a lot more content, and then it can refer to the knowledge in any of the chats. But you can also get it to refer to previous chats as well. So it's a sort of pseudo memory, but you can also add things like brand guidelines as well. So a project in Claude is more like a custom GPT. And a custom GPT is where you train it with like a recipe and any knowledge. So you can add brand guidelines. You can share it. I think we've just lost, if we just lost Zak, or we just lost me. Can we check in the chat? Back on, Anne. You are hit there now. Okay. I'm not sure what you heard. Zak's disappeared as well, so I'm not sure if that's an internet issue. Michael, did you? Okay, there he is. He's coming back. The interesting thing about Claude was, until a couple of months ago, it didn't have access to the internet, so it always seemed like it was a bit out of date, although the writing quality was much better. You'll find that the majority of the people at Anicca prefer Claude. So Zak, I think you've either got no video or no sound. We're not sure. We think we've lost you. Oh, you're flicking in and out, so you must have an internet connection issue. I'm not sure if we've answered that question. That's thrown me a little bit. Okay, I'm just seeing if there's any. Oh, yeah. Erilyn, thank you. Yeah, I knew one of them had updated to cite between chats. Right, so, Zak's coming. You come in through another.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Claude for me. I think Claude. Sorry, just to jump on that. I think Claude is probably the best one in terms of the content it puts out. Also, I saw a comment there about how it cites, and I think Claude is really good at citing too, which is something to keep in mind. So yeah, that's just my 10 cents worth. Is I would prefer to use Claude for writing than ChatGPT most of the time, just because I find that it's a bit more natural with the copy.
Excellent. Well, I realise we're coming up to 10 o'clock, so I'm just going to ask you guys if you would give us a review in Google, if you've enjoyed the presentation from Zak today. This was a really popular one, actually, so I think we probably need to do more of these AI human interaction ones, because I think it's become very, very, because I think some of the things that you were talking apply even if you were writing manually as well. I'm not sure we've answered all the questions, though.
No. There's a few practical ones which I noticed there. One was about excuse me, I think I just lost it if I scroll up a bit now. The one about Matt asked, can you prompt AI to give responses without emojis? I know what you mean when you're saying he's got these like bulleted points and the silly rocket emoji on everything. That's definitely something you can do. You can just build that into the prompt itself. Don't use this. Just be very, very clear with what you don't want it to include, really, basically, and you should be fine.
The other thing that you didn't mention, Zak, which I do a lot, is I cross-contaminate between the different LLMs. So I will write something in ChatGPT because sometimes it's quite good for quick editing. But I will also do it the other way around. I'll go into Claude and then cross-check that, and vice versa. I'll even ask Claude to write me a prompt to do something else somewhere else. Another tool that you might want to look at is Google Notebook LLMs, because Google Notebook LM, and the reason for that is that you can load huge amounts of content, particularly if you're writing something like a book. And the other advantage of that is it's not quite as reliant on using its own training data, and it will tend to focus on the data that you provide. So that if you've got a lot of proprietary data, or you've got academic research or something that's quite niche, the LMs are more likely to make that stuff up. Whereas if you're providing it the context and all the source data, then that's much more reliable. So I definitely would recommend Google LMs for that sort of thing as well.
Perfect. Yeah, I've learned something new now too. I bookmarked that one. I'll have to try that one out too. No, I do that. The Google Notebook LM.
Oh yeah.
That one's news to me. I'm not seeing that yet, but yeah. I think that's. I don't know if you've got time. We are definitely running over now. But yeah, I hope you've all found that really, really helpful. And if you do have any more questions, please feel free.
Just a quick update. So next week it's completely opposite end of the spectrum. Lucia from Anicca Insights, which is our sister company, she's going to be talking about the evolution of Armadillo, which is the analytics tool that she's built. So it's a bit focused more on numbers and e-commerce strategy. So you guys may not be interested in that. We do find that a lot of people that are really heavily into the writing aren't always into the numbers as much. But that is a little bit of a stereotype. So hopefully there'll be some people that would like that one as well. Thank you, Michael. Really appreciate the review.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So, and Rob's saying how good Notebook LM is as well. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for all the messages, and thank you for your time, guys. Appreciate it.
Brilliant. Okay, see ya.
All right, bye.
We'll get recording in a couple of hours.